My 68-year-old father had been sending money to a scammer posing as his girlfriend for 8 months. I found out when he asked me for a loan for her emergency. What happened when I showed him the truth was the hardest part of all. There are conversations with your parents that you did not imagine you were going to have. The ones about their health, about their independence, about the moment when roles start to invert in a way neither of you chose, but that life produces anyway. The conversation I had with my dad one Sunday in October was none of those. It was a conversation about a woman named Sandra who lived in Atlanta and who was a doctor and whom he had met on an app and who had spent 8 months being the most important person in his emotional life and whom I had never seen in a real video call and to whom he had sent 230,000 pesos for emergencies that always had a logic that sounded reasonable until it stopped sounding that way. It was not a conversation I had imagined, but it was the one that arrived. My name is Gabriella. I am 40 years old. I am a middle school teacher, and I live 20 minutes from the house where I grew up, where my dad has lived alone since my mom died 12 years ago. My dad's name is Roberto. He is 68 years old. He is retired from a telephone company where he worked for 31 years. He is an intelligent, affectionate man who reads the newspaper every day and who has opinions about politics and economics, and who in no internal map of mine corresponded to the category of person who could be the victim of a scam. That is also part of what I want to say in this story. Romance scams do not choose clever or careless people. They choose lonely people. And my dad, though he had his family, and though he would never have said it with that word, was lonely in the specific way you're lonely when you spent 12 years without the person with whom you shared 32 years of life. The Sunday in October, I arrived at his house, as always, for lunch. We were in the after-lunch conversation when he told me he needed to ask me a favor. I told him, of course. He told me Sandra was going through a difficult situation, that she had had a problem with her American bank account, and that temporarily she could not access her funds, and that she needed to cover an urgent medical expense for a patient whose family could not pay, and that she did not want to leave him without care. He told me whether I could lend him 30,000 pesos that he would pay me back as soon as Sandra resolved her account situation. I listened to him say all of that, and something in me made a movement that was not yet alarm. It was a question. I asked him how long he had been talking to Sandra. He told me 8 months. I asked whether he had seen her on a video call. He told me yes, several times. I asked whether any of the calls had ever been spontaneous, without having scheduled them, and whether the image had been smooth or had technical problems. He looked at me in a way that told me those questions were saying something to him that he had not wanted to formulate for himself. He told me there was always some technical problem, that the image cut out, that she had communication restrictions because of the work at the hospital. I asked whether he had sent her money before. He took a while. He told me yes, that there had been other situations where she had needed help and that he had helped her because he cared about her and because she always paid him back, she said, as soon as she resolved her accounts. I asked how much in total. He did not want to tell me the number. I asked him again. He told me the number. 230,000 pesos. In 8 months. I did not react in that moment in the way a part of me wanted to react, because what I saw on my dad's face when he said that number was not the face of someone who does not know something is wrong. It was the face of someone who somewhere already knows it and who has not yet found the way to accept it. I told him I needed to show him something on my phone. He said okay. I had heard about romance scams enough to know they existed. Not enough to have the process clear, but enough to do the most basic search any person can do when they suspect someone's photo is not who they say they are. I picked up the phone. I asked my dad to show me Sandra's profile photo. I took it. I went to Google Images. I did a reverse image search. 30 seconds. Sandra's photo appeared in multiple results. It was the photo of a real doctor who had a public presence on professional networks. A real doctor who lived in Canada, who was not named Sandra, who did not know her image was being used to scam people on another continent. I showed my dad the screen. What followed in the next few minutes was the hardest part of everything that happened that day. Not because my dad got angry or defensive, but because he did neither of those things. He sat looking at the screen, and after a time I cannot measure precisely, he told me he knew. That somewhere he had known for some time. That there had been moments where something did not add up, and that he had chosen not to question it too much, because what he felt when he talked to Sandra was something he had not felt in 12 years. That he had felt accompanied, that he had felt important to someone, that she asked him how he was and listened and remembered what he had told her the week before, and that, though it sounds simple, was something he had missed in a way he had not told anyone. My dad did not cry, but I did. That afternoon, we did several things together. We blocked Sandra's profile on all the platforms where my dad had been in contact with her. We reviewed whether he had shared bank details, identity documents, or additional personal information that could be used for other types of fraud. He had shared photos and had made transfers, but had not shared identity documents or direct bank details beyond those of the transfer platforms he had used. We called his bank to report the pattern of transfers and ask what options there were. The bank informed him that international transfers in those amounts were practically unrecoverable, but that they could make a note in his file and guide him on how to protect his account going forward. We made a report on the platform where he had met Sandra so that the profile would be investigated. And at the end of that afternoon, I asked my dad whether he wanted to talk to someone, a psychologist, someone who was not me and who could help him process what had happened without the weight of that person also being his daughter and also having her own emotions about the matter. He told me he would think about it. 2 weeks later, he told me yes. What I want to say about the money, I will say briefly because it is not the most important part. The 230,000 pesos did not come back. There is no realistic mechanism that recovers them when the transfers are international and the recipient is an organized fraud network. My dad knows this, and he has processed it in the way you process a loss that has no repair, with time and with help and with the decision not to let that loss be the last word on what happened. What I want to say about my dad is more important. My dad is not a careless man. He is not a man without judgment. He is a 68-year-old man who lost his life companion 12 years ago and who found in an online interaction something that filled a real space that had been empty for years. The people who design these scams know exactly which spaces to fill. They do not attack intelligence. They attack loneliness. And loneliness is not a vulnerability that is resolved by being smarter. It is resolved by real connection. What changed in our relationship after that Sunday was something I did not expect. My dad and I started talking about things we had not talked about before, about how he felt living alone, about what he missed about my mom in specific ways he had never said in words, about there being days where the house seemed very big and very quiet, about the reason he had kept sending money to Sandra even when something did not add up, being that the conversations with her were the part of the day he most looked forward to. Those conversations we had after that Sunday were more important to me than anything else that came out of everything that happened, because they showed me that the problem that had allowed the scam was not my dad's lack of judgment. It was that I had not seen clearly enough what he needed, and that now that I saw it, I could do something real with that. What I want to take from this story has parts for different people. For those who have parents or older family members living alone, the conversation about digital security is not the most important conversation you can have with them. The most important conversation is about how they are. Really, not the how are you of protocol that gets answered fine. The how are you that opens space for them to say that there are days where the loneliness weighs more than others. Because romance scams find people in that space. And if that space has real connection, it is not as available to be filled by something false. The practical also matters. Reverse image search on Google is free, takes 30 seconds, and can confirm whether someone's photo is who they say they are. If someone you met online can never do a spontaneous and smooth video call, that is information. If someone you care about online asks you for money for any reason before having met in person, that is the clearest signal of all. And if it has already happened, if someone you love has already transferred money to a romance scam, the most important thing you can do is not make that person feel stupid for having done it. It is to make them know that what made them vulnerable was not their lack of intelligence. It was their humanity, and that humanity deserves real connection. If this story reached you, comment. Have you had honest conversations with your parents about how they are emotionally? Like if you believe loneliness in older adults is a public health problem that does not receive enough attention. Subscribe for more real stories. Share with someone who has a father or older family member living alone and who might need to have that conversation. Practical tip: if you suspect a family member is in contact with someone suspicious on social media or apps, ask them to show you that person's profile photo and do a reverse image search at images.google.com. It is free, takes less than a minute, and can reveal whether the image was taken from another person. You can also report suspicious profiles directly on the platforms where they operate. In the United States, romance scams can be reported to the FTC at reportfraud.ftc.gov.